Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head up to Norway once again and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So as I've told you in the past, the standard of Norwegian beer is very high these days. They seem to be going through somewhat of a boom when it comes to the number of craft breweries at the moment, and hopefully we start to get more of their beers over here in Sweden or across in Copenhagen, of course, as well. But the brewery that we're going to have a look at today is one that seems to carry a very good reputation. Their beers are always very highly rated, but I've been struggling to actually get a hold of any other stuff. I've seen them floating around on different web shops, but they've sold out very quickly. And then when I've been over in Copenhagen, they've always been kind of sold out as well. But I finally managed to get a hold of one, so definitely looking forward to this. This brewery seemed to be very highly rated in the category of New England Hazy IPA, but they do various different styles, and hopefully we can have a look at a few of those different things over the next little while. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today seems to be very highly rated, and I have to say I'm curious to see how it turns out. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Stavanger. We're going to have a look at my first beer from Salikatt Bryggeri, and this one is called the Laws of Motion. So it comes in at 8% ABV. It's a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and I bought this one at Kiosk in Copenhagen. It was actually the very last one that was on the shelf, so I got really lucky with this, but when I saw the name Laws of Motion, and with my background in chemistry and physics, I knew I just had to go for it. Quite often, Kiosk will have beers from like the same brewery with lots of different names and artworks and things, but at some point it just comes down to the name of the brewery or the artwork, of course. But yeah, this is one that really stood out to me. Laws of Motion, a little bit of classical mechanics in there. But yeah, this should be very, very nice, this one. It's got a rating of 4.15 on Untappd. So yeah, one of the most highly rated New Englands that I've reviewed on the channel in quite a little while. So hopefully it lives up to the expectations that I have for it. It is pretty fresh from what I understand, so high hopes. But let's crack on and see how we get on with this one then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Salikatt Bryggeri. This is the very first time I'm reviewing one of their beers, as I mentioned, but hopefully not the last. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Norwegian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but not as often as I would like. If you would like to be a Norwegian beer mule for me, please do get in touch with me through Instagram. Basically, I send you some cash, you gather up some Norwegian beers for me and send them down to me here in Sweden. That would be awesome, from different breweries and things like that. Get some more Norwegian breweries up here on the channel. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Salikatt Bryggeri for the very first time. So Salikatt Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, is based in Stavanger, and the company was founded back in 2015 by Bjarte Halvorsen along with his wife Tonje. So Bjarte is a long-time home brewer, and he actually trained as a mechanical engineer at NTNU, which is the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, but eventually his hobby took over pretty much all of his time, and he decided that he was going to turn things around and become a professional brewer. So he worked at a number of breweries throughout Norway from 2013, and this includes Lervig, Torn, Bakke, and then finally Keen. And at this point he decided that he wanted to start producing his own beers. But to fund the brewery, Bjarte and Tonje sold their house, and pretty much all of the money to fund building up the brewery was taken out of this actually. Apparently all they had left was his wife's bunad, which is a Norwegian traditional dress. So they sold pretty much everything to get the brewery off the ground, which is pretty cool actually. But the brewery itself is based in Hillevåg in the south of the city, and they started brewing in this facility back in 2016. But over the following years they continued to grow the brewery, and in 2017 they produced about 30,000 litres, and then the following year in 2018 they produced around 45,000 litres. And it was that year as well that they first turned a profit. But they also opened up an on-site bar in 2018, and they also were joined by Alexander Edlund that year as well in the brewing team, and I believe he is now the head brewer. But the name Salikatt is taken from a local curse word. It can be used to express anger or irritation, but also a pleasant surprise, apparently. So yeah, using a very local name for the brewery, of course. But as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 130 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. And as I said, this brewery seems to be well known for the New England Hazes, but they have various other different styles of beer as well, actually. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Salikatt Bryggeri for the moment. That was all the information I was able to find from different newspaper articles and things like that, but I think it is quite a nice summary of what these guys are all about. Apparently they plan to just stay as a relatively kind of small scale brewery, and they want to produce some of the best beers in the world, and they seem to be producing some very, very good stuff from what I can gather. So if you're watching up in Norway, let me know what your thoughts are on Salikatt Bryggeri. But yeah, that's everything I can tell you about Salikatt Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done so far. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this. So just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up, you can see the S that's on this. This is the standard symbol for Salikatt. I'm not sure how well that will be showing up on the camera, of course, because it is shiny and the cameras tend to hate shiny surfaces. But there you go, you can see this nice thing here. So it's got the yeah, it's got the law of motion, the centrifugal force, F equals M, M times V squared over R. I remember working with that in my classical mechanics class. Pain in the hole. But there you go. There you can see a nice little centrifuge there. So it's obviously kind of kind of referring a little bit to that, maybe the whirlpool or whatever. But it says underneath here, centrifugal force is a fictitious force. I don't think it is. But in fairness, you know, this is one of the funny things. You can actually, in terms of physics, there's actually more proof or science generally, there's actually more proof for evolution than there is for gravity. Gravity is one of the least understood things when it comes to science here. But it says on the side, in our everlasting search for the best process, best ingredients and best combination of process and ingredients, we've come up with this new and smooth hop treat. The malt bill is light coloured with oats for a smooth mouthfeel, and the hop profile is a mix between American and Australian hops. And this is brewed by Salikatt Bryggeri in Stavanger, Norway. So the hops in this one are Strata and Eclipse. Strata, of course, is an American hop. I think about 16% alpha acid. Normally it gives you that big melody component, but it also has a little bit of a strawberry character to it. And the Eclipse hop was one that I think I've only had once before, so I had to make a few notes on this just to see what we're kind of supposed to get from this. I always like learning about these new hops. So Eclipse is an Australian hop that was produced by Hop Products Australia. It was originally created back in 2004, and it had the experimental name HPA 16, but it gives between 15 to 18% alpha acid, and it's supposed to give a very big kind of mandarin and pine needle like flavour. So we'll need to see how that comes out. But yeah, nicely presented beer, this one. 440ml can. This one I believe cost me, I want to say 60 Danish, maybe about 60 Danish kroner. So that's roughly about 75 Swedish, which is about €7.50, somewhere in the region of like £6.50 sterling, and I guess maybe about $8.50 American, maybe $9, something like that. It is a Norwegian beer, so you will pay a little bit more for it. But you know, I've wanted to try something from this brewery for quite a wee while. But yeah, you have to remember that with Scandinavian or Nordic beer in general, should we say, the currencies are very strong, the labour costs are high up here, so yeah, you will pay a little bit more for these beers. Systembolaget in Sweden actually makes things fairly cheap right enough, but yeah, if you're bringing stuff in from the other Nordic countries, or you're buying over in Copenhagen as this one was, then it will be, especially Norway and Finland I think are the two most expensive of the Nordic countries. Well, Iceland as well is probably because of the transport costs and stuff like that too. Don't know what the Faroes is like right enough. I need to get up there and take a little look. But yeah, anyway, we've got this guy out and into the glass. The Laws of Motion, 8% New England Hazy Imperial, whatever you want to call it, double IPA. So here we are. So this beer has poured very nicely. You can see it's poured with just about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head, but that is fading away very, very quickly to just leave a very thin foamy layer, but there will be a nice slightly thicker ring around at the edge of the glass. But it's got a lovely, slightly thicker, it's got a lovely bit of a bigger bubble kind of thing to it, which is quite nice. But yeah, this is a lovely, lovely looking beer, I have to say. Yeah, in terms of its appearance, it's kind of what you would expect for a New England IPA. I would compare this one to a mango juice. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it looks very, very nice. Yeah, the way that this goes together is pretty awesome. So yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, remember when it comes to beer, the colour depends on one, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will of course affect the colour of the beer as well. But when it comes to New England IPAs, you don't often have to care about those particular variables. But yeah, it looks the part, this one. In terms of the level of haze in this beer, for an 8%er, it's got pretty much roughly what you would expect from it in terms of haze. But remember, the level of haze is dependent on the oak content, the wheat content, and the yeast to a degree as well. So yeah, that can vary from brewery to brewery, recipe to recipe, and so on. But yeah, this beer looks pretty much as you would expect from a New England IPA of any description, to be honest with you. So I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the appearance of this beer, but let's have a look at the aroma and just see how we get on. So let's do this. Oh, right. I'm going to say, I have to say this one doesn't have the most assuming, it doesn't have the most kind of pungent of aromas actually, but I think it's very fresh, you can tell that. So first and foremost, just a brief overview of the aroma. I'd say that the green component of this one is more floral, but there's a fair wee bit of grassiness in there. The malt base leans towards the kind of bready side of things. Maybe a little bit of wheat coming out of it as well. And the fruity side of things is interesting because, you know, normally Strata has this quite pungent, melony character to it, but the aroma that's coming out of this, it's kind of, you know, it's a little bit nondescript almost. I mean, it has a little bit of a kind of, it just has a wee bit of that lightly orangey note from the Eclipse or whatever. Yeah, if I try and sugar the beer up a little bit, even then, you don't get all that much. The aroma in this one really is not all that kind of, it really is not all that pungent. So that's very, very interesting with this beer. Sometimes you get ones that just come straight out of the glass at you like that, and you're like, phew. This one is actually very mild-mannered, should we say. But that's definitely interesting. The more that I smell of it too, I'm starting to get more and more of the oaty character out of this beer too. But I will say it's quite, at the same time, I say there's not too much coming out of the nose on this beer, but it is quite pleasant. Let's just stick with that for a little bit and see if we start to get a wee bit more out of it. I mean, yeah, the backbone is kind of as you'd expect. There's a wee bit of a kind of, there is a little touch of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing to it. So yeah, a little bit of a light kind of fresh white bread crusty character in there. Some soft white bready character as well, like a fluffy white bread. And you've also got, you can smell on top of that, there's a little tiny touch of wheat, but I'm mainly getting like a soft, kind of smooth and slightly sweet, oaty character coming out of the aroma of this beer. So yeah, that's quite nice. Yeah, the oats smell very, very creamy in this one, and as I've mentioned to you before on the channel, I think when it comes to the oats are usually an indicator of how fresh the beer is. So the more creamy they smell, it tends to be the fresher the beer is, and the more kind of dry and things they smell, that tends to tell you that it's a little bit older, if you like, but you're getting a very nice creamy and smooth and slightly sweet oaty character out this one. There's one or two little hints of a Werther's Original type note in that, but I would add that is very, very minimal actually. It's quite a smooth, creamy, oaty type New England IPA, this one. Yeah, it's a little bit. It smells a little bit like some of the more old school things that we were getting from Stigberry. It's back in 2015, 2016, stuff like that. The amazing Haze, the Narangi from OO, the GBG Beer Week beer. It smells kind of along those lines, to be quite honest with you. So I like that. I do like that about this beer. It's interesting. It has a little bit of Christmas to it as well. So I wonder, could there be a wee touch of Pilsner malt in here or something? I don't know, or lager malt. But yeah, aroma wise, the malty side of things does take a little bit of time to open up, but it's nice anyway. As I mentioned earlier, the green component in this beer is quite it's quite floral actually. The more that I smell of it, the deeper the floral character gets. Teeny wee bit of earthiness, which you're always going to get, but yeah, mainly a nice kind of quite bright floral aromaticity to it. It gets a little bit deeper the more you smell of it, like I said. Wee bit of a lighter kind of grassy sort of thing in there, a bit of a zesty kind of character. But yeah, the way that the aroma goes together in this one is very nice. Yeah, a little touch of earthiness, deep kind of bright floral aromaticity, and a bit of a light zesty grassiness in there. The fruity side of things for me, I do get a little bit of the strawberry from the Strata right enough. I can smell that. I can smell a bit of a light but still juicy orange. And yeah, this is quite interesting. I mean, it's, as I say, I'm not getting too much in the way of fruitiness there. It does have a little bit of a fruity, juicy character to it. Maybe a wee bit of a light kind of apricot, or yeah, a little bit of an apricot papaya type thing, a wee bit of that dried kind of tropical fruit in there. But yeah, just a little bit of strawberry and a wee hint of orange for me. But it's interesting regardless. I'm surprised I'm not getting more of the pine needles from the Eclipse Hop right enough. But yeah, it does smell like quite a nice beer, but like I say, not the most assuming of New England IPAs. But I'm wondering, this is another interesting thing about these beers too, is that the New England IPA, as I've mentioned many a time, it relies on late addition hopping and dry hopping. And these two types of hopping, the late addition hopping is going to give you a little bit of bitterness and mainly flavour and aroma. Dry hopping is going to give you completely flavour and aroma. These are more prominent in New England IPAs, of course. West Coast IPAs have those two in addition to early addition hopping, which is the one that gives you the big bitterness and a stronger green component. So yeah, this one, I think I've got a feeling. I wonder if this one could be totally dry hopped. It might well be. Be curious to know about that. But yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to consider the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. I think it's about time that we have a taste of this beer though. So this one is the Laws of Motion, an 8% New England double IPA from Salikatt Bryggeri in Stavanger in Norway. My very first time trying a beer from these guys, a very highly rated Norwegian brewery. So let's get stuck into this one then. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh, yeah. I tell you something. It reflects the aroma pretty well. This beer is very, very fresh, actually. It's very, very fresh. But yeah, this is one of these very, very light, kind of just barley malt leaning, I'd say, yeah, barley malt leaning, easy going New England IPAs. For an 8% New England double IPA, that is stupidly drinkable. But a very nice beer, absolutely. And yeah, this does remind me of some of the really old school New Englands that we had in Sweden back in the day. The New Sweden IPA from Opigårds, the OO Narangi, the GBG Beer Week 16, the amazing Haze from Stigberry. It really reminds me of these kind of beers. So the first impression you get of this one is it does really lean towards a kind of bready side of the New England spectrum, if we can call it that, the bready part of the New England spectrum. But it also feels very, very clean and very, very drinkable. And it does build in bitterness a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste with it as well. So yeah, this is a very, very solid beer, I have to say. Gets a big thumbs up from me. You can feel the cleanliness of it too. I think it must just be the Norwegian water. Obviously, you're going to have very, very high quality water with the Norwegian mountains and fjords and things like that up there. You always find that with with the Nordic beers. You get they just always feel very, very clean, and you can tell the quality of the water in these beers. So, yeah, this is very, very nice. Yeah, where do we start with this one then? So let's focus on the middle of your palate. So there's a teeny sprinkling of a kind of light bread crusty character there. That sits in the middle third of your palate. On top of that, you've got a very light, kind of quite thin, but still quite fluffy layer of a soft, kind of fresh white bread. There's a lot of that coming out in this beer, which I really do like. So, yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. You can feel a bit of the wheat in there. There is a wee bit of wheat in this, just kind of thickening it out. And this beer, the more that I drink of it as well, it actually gets a little bit more wheaty and bitey, which I enjoy. So yeah, there's a wee touch of a kind of, as I say, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing. You've got a bit of bread crust, a bit of a soft, fresh white bread, a little bit of wheat in there, and then on top of that you're getting the smoother kind of oaty characters in there. But the malt base in this one, it's one of these New Englands where the malt base is a little bit more kind of light and crisp in my mind. But yeah, the oaty characters on top of the wheaty thing. Let's see about that. Yeah, it is again, it's quite a thin layer of oaty character. You can feel that going down the middle line of your palate, the oats are quite creamy, and you can feel them just spreading out a little bit more toward the kind of extremities of that middle third of your palate. Um, so yeah, it's quite nice. Again, there's maybe one or two little tiny hints of biscuit in there, like a McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. But again, I would add that is very, very minimal. This really is more like an old school. It is one of these more old school beers. I mean, if you like the Narangi, the Narangi, the Amazing Haze, these kind of Swedish IPAs. So this is one that you are going to very much enjoy, but it's a very, very well done beer. I'd be curious to know whether they do have ones that are a bit more kind of thick and creamy, some more sweeter ones and things like that. But yeah, I'd be curious to know how stereotypical an example this is of the Salikatt New England IPAs, because different breweries brew in different styles. For me, there's 6 different things you should think about with a New England IPA. So some of them can be more yeasty and farmhousey. Some of them can be kind of rye, sort of rye malt leaning and kind of grainy. These two are a little bit more common over in New England itself, in the States. But then you get the wheaty bitey ones, you get the oaty creamy ones, the barley malt leaning bready ones. But you can also get ones that are a little bit kind of sweeter and things as well. This one is a little bit more akin to, I would say, like a Trillium type New England IPAs, the kind of light and more kind of wheaty, bitey and crisp ones, if that makes sense. But yeah, fair little bit of barley malt character coming out in this one too, but it's nice. It certainly is very nice. Hmm. I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of the palate in this though. So let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up there, once again, but not too much. Base of the back third of the palate, there's a wee bit more of a kind of soft bread crusty. There's a wee bit of a more kind of soft bread crusty character coming out of it again, but it's a wee bit more grainy further back. You can feel that the white bready layer is a little bit thicker there. Then on top of that, you're getting the wheat, and on top of the wheat, it's a little bit more kind of well, the wheaty character is definitely a little bit more kind of bitey and things, and I'm finding that the more that I drink of this beer, the more kind of wheaty and bitey, and the slightly more bitter it gets on the green component too, but we'll come to that in a minute. But sitting on top of the kind of the wheaty, bitey layer of this beer, you can just detect the yeast very slightly. So for me, the yeasty character in this beer has a wee bit more of a slightly dense, bready, doughy note to it, but there's a few kind of woody, crackery sort of vibes to it as well, and a wee bit of bread crust. So you can feel that just sitting on the top of that back third of the palate there. But that is a very nice beer. It is very nice from the malty yeasty perspective anyway, and a little bit more of a kind of old school New England IPA. So for those of you watching the States, it's more like a kind of Trillium New England. For those of you watching in Europe, it is a little bit more like a kind of Steepberg. It's like a kind of bready sort of thing. The amazing Haze Narangi type New England IPA. It's very much like that. But yeah, I like it. You can feel certainly on the back third of the palate the flavour is a little bit taller, and as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit and it feels a little bit more kind of crisp and things. So yeah, I like how it goes together. So thumbs up to them for that. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. So, hoppy side of the beer again is pretty nice. And just going from the way it is in the mouth, I think this one is mainly, I think there might be a little bit of late addition hop in this, but I think it is mainly dry hopping that we're getting out of this. And again, you can tell from the hoppy side of things, it's very, very fresh. So, back corners of the palate, there's definitely a wee touch of earthiness there, but not that much. As you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you can feel a nice little bit of floral aromaticity, but I'm also feeling a little bit of that kind of dusty sort of thing. And again, this is because the beer is so fresh, but it might also be because it must be very, very heavily dry hopped. I think 20, they can be between 20 and 40 grams per litre or something like that. It's crazy levels of hops that they put in these beers. But yeah, you can feel that nice floral aromatic character there, and it's got that dusty note to it as well. And the floral aromaticity, I can get a wee tiny little bit of piney note out of this, which, as I say, I think that's coming from the Eclipse Strata. I can't remember. I think Strata was a bit more kind of floral and spicy, so that would make sense that you're getting a little bit of that too. But like I say, around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of light and grassy in a sense. So yeah, the way that goes together is very, very nice. So again, a thumbs up from me. So on the fruity side of things, the front third of your palate, so border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up there, wee bit of a kind of slightly thicker white bread, but then the base of the front third of the palate again is that smooth white bready note, and then on top of that you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer, and it's quite interesting in this regard as well. So on the on that fruity side of things then, I'd say you do get a wee bit of that pungent, from the Strata, you do get a wee bit of that kind of pungent melon on the back half of the front third of your palate, so it feels a little bit like that. But I also get a wee bit more of a kind of straight up citrus there. It almost feels like quite a strong lemon or a little bit of a passion fruit or something like that. So there is something like that going on in the very back of the front third of the palate there. So yeah, strong passion fruit, but then a little bit more of a kind of melony character as you come further forward. But then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, I get a very bright orangey note from it, which I'm guessing comes from the Eclipse. But I can definitely get, the further into the aftertaste you go, you get a little bit of that kind of candied strawberry sort of thing from the Strata as well. So yeah, this is a really interesting combination of fruity characters in this beer, but as I say, you can tell this one is very, very fresh. It's maybe come on the ferry, straight on the ferry from Oslo down to Copenhagen or whatever, but yeah, I do think this is pretty damn nice actually, so it gets a big thumbs up. It does get a big thumbs up from me in that regard. Yeah, lovely taste in beer, this, from quite a few different perspectives. But like I say, very much like an old school, like a Trillium or an amazing steep beer. It's amazing haze type vibe to it, this one. So yeah, thumbs up to Salikatt there. But I will definitely be curious in the future to try a few more things from them and see how reflective this one is of their kind of overall mantra, if you like. So let me know how the other IPAs that you guys have had from this brewery have been as well. I'd be very curious to know. But let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So mouthfeel wise, this beer, to me it's right in the middle of the spectrum. It's mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. Has a very clean mouthfeel to it, but at the same time there's a bit of that kind of creaminess from the oats in there, and it has that bit of bitiness too, but that's kind of, we're talking about the malt there. So yeah, the malt is kind of crisp underneath. You can feel the bitiness of the wheat, the smoothness of the oats. There's not really a degree of sweetness to this one. IBUs, I think this might be a sort of 25 or 30 IBU beer. I think it feels a little bit more than that though, because it's very fresh. You get a bit of that kind of dry hopping dustiness out of it. But then, yeah, you've also got a lovely little bit of a light fruity note out of this too. So yeah, I really like how this one, I really like how this goes together. The way that this goes about its business is very, very nice. Yeah, mouthfeel wise, just it's actually quite light and drinkable in a lot of ways, but definitely kind of mid-bodied towards the lighter side of mid-bodied, I would say. But overall, a very, very nice beer and a nice introduction to Salikatt Bryggeri as well. So I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Laws of Motion, an 8% New England double IPA from Salikatt Bryggeri in Stavanger in Norway. I could almost have forgotten that it was a double. It drinks really just like a kind of single IPA. That's, pardon me, how kind of good it is. So yeah, an awesome beer. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Salikatt Bryggeri, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. I do hope that I can get up to Stavanger and do some brewery interviews and, you know, filming some tap rooms and things like that. That would be pretty awesome to do, actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Salikatt's social media. This one was the Laws of Motion, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Salikatt Bryggeri in Stavanger in Norway. Slange, skål, and cheers.